All right, so we're at our last part of topic 1. And just a recap, so we discussed um, map distortions and why map projections are distorted. We then looked at the types of maps. So you have the categories of maps. You had thematic and reference maps, and then we looked at the types of reference maps and the types of thematic maps. What we're going to look at now are the spatial patterns that can be seen on maps. So how data can be organized on maps and what you should be looking for when you look at a map. So no tool communicates spatial information more effectively than a map. We keep saying spatial information. All that means is how information is portrayed on a space. So like, how far apart is it? How close together is it? Where is it? That's all spatial information is. And so we're going to look at what patterns you might see when looking at maps. So the first thing you could see on a map is the absolute location. Absolute location is the exact spot where something is according to a system. So an address, like your address to your house, is the exact location. There's also latitude and longitude, so the coordinates of a certain place, like 32 degrees north, 50 degrees east. That's an absolute location. When you use GPS, it's giving you an absolute location. But whenever you ask me, how do I get somewhere? I can't give you an absolute location because I'm not a GPS. I can tell you the address, but I'm more likely to use relative location. And that's where something is in relation to other things. So saying like, it's next to my house, or it's between Shreveport and Monroe. Like if you told someone that you're from Ruston, and they're like, where is that? You would say, well, it's between Shreveport and Monroe. That would give them a relative idea of where it's at. That doesn't mean they could get there. That's not the absolute location. But in their mind, now they relatively know where the location is at. Same thing with distance. So you have absolute distance, the specific measure of distance, whether that's miles, kilometers, feet, anything. On a map, that is shown by the map scale. So there'll be one of these on the map, and it'll say like 1 inch equals 1 mile. So on the map, if you measured it with a ruler, you could absolutely know the distance between here and Baton Rouge if you took your ruler and you measured it, because they've put the map to scale. But you can also look at relative distance, and we get in kind of a gray area here, but I love talking about this because relative distance we talk about a lot. It's really just how close that you feel like something is. So distance expressed in terms of time, effort, or cost. And the thing about relative distance is that is different for everybody. So the relative distance between two things is different for each person. But the relative distance is decreased through an increase in spatial interaction. Now, I want you to really get that in your head. Relative distance is decreased through an increase in spatial interaction. Now, what the heck is spatial interaction? Spatial interaction is the connections, contact, movement, and flow of things between places. So how much information or contact is happening between two places. Let me give you an example. In your head, Arkansas doesn't seem that close because you probably don't frequent there that much. You would never really like say, hey, I gotta run to Arkansas to get something. You wouldn't do that. You would say that about Shreveport. You would say, hey, I gotta run to Shreveport. I've gotta run to the boardwalk to get something or whatever. They're the same distance. Like their absolute distance is like the same amount of time. Like it would take the same amount of time to get there, but because in our minds, like that's a different state, you don't have very many connections there. Like you don't contact that place very much. It seems further away, but it's about the same distance as going to Shreveport would be. A couple of more examples of that. Let me move my face again. The interstate has drastically decreased the distance between cities. Now, when I say distance here, I'm talking about the relative distance. I'm not talking about the absolute distance. But before the interstate existed, like the distance between here and New Orleans felt a lot longer because it took longer to get there. But with the interstate, it shortened the amount of time that it took to get there, so the distance seems shorter, although the absolute distance hasn't changed. Same thing, same idea for Amazon. Amazon has drastically decreased the distance between consumers and their products. 15 years ago, I mean, the exact distance hasn't changed, but Amazon has created this system that allows us to get products so much more faster. And then the internet has drastically decreased the distance between people and information. So it's right there. You feel like you can get information as fast as you need to because the relative distance is so short. Absolute direction. The exact direction based on the cardinal directions. So north, south, east, west. Same thing, relative direction. Direction in accordance to an object's current location. So turn left at Target, then right at the second stop sign. If someone asked you how to get somewhere, you probably wouldn't say, you're going to get on this road, drive north, then in 800 feet, you're going to go northwest. You would say, you're going to get on this road. When you see this, you're going to turn right. You're going to keep going until you see this, and then you're going to turn left. That's relative direction. The last few things, the last few types of spatial patterns you will see on maps is density. So density is the number of something in a defined area. So if this is 1 square mile, how prevalent are these houses? Like that's the density. And then are they clustered or are they spread out? You can also see distribution, the way something is spread out over an area. So you can also call that concentration. So there's the same amount of houses here, but they're distributed differently, so the feel could be different. So these probably feel like there's not very many people here, but if you lived like this, you might feel a little crowded. Same amount of houses, but they're distributed differently, so it makes the spatial pattern look different. And then you can also look at maps to see patterns in spatial association. So you can look at a map and see if 2 or more phenomena, which are just things on the map, if they're related, how they're associated or how they're correlated with one another. And if that seems vague, we're going to look more at maps and show how you can look at 2 things and understand how they might be related based on a map. An example would be you could take a map and you could correlate, like, okay, this map is showing the average number of years of education in each state, like how long people stay in school. And then you could also have on that map like the crime rates, and you could see if those 2 things are related. If you go to school longer, are you less likely to get involved with criminal activity? So that would be an example of the patterns in spatial association. So how can you look at 2 different spatial patterns and see if they're related? So that is the end of topic 1 of unit 1. Make sure that you answer the question underneath this video. And if you need to go back and watch the other videos to make sure that you have all the notes that you need to have, you are welcome to do that.